You've given us a really rich set of materials this time, all focusing on, well, a truly fascinating figure, Marcus Aurelius.
Indeed.
And our goal for this deep dive is essentially to pull out the most powerful, most useful insights from his meditations and all the context you send over.
Right.
We want to give you a really practical handle on his philosophy without getting bogged down in, all the academic jargon. Think of it as your fast track to some pretty profound wisdom.
Exactly. And it's great you've shared not just meditations itself, but also some really interesting background on Aurelius.
Yeah, the bio stuff was great.
He was born Marcus Annius Verus, 121 AD, right? Rose to become emperor, tracing his family back quite far, even to Numa, Rome's second king, apparently.
Wow, okay.
His reign, well, it wasn't easy, marked by major wars, against barbarian tribes, though there was a significant settlement eventually.
Right, the northern frontiers.
Then there was the revolt of Avidius Cassius, and quite a lot of personal tragedy, too. Lost his wife Faustina, many of his children, leaving only Commodus, who wasn't exactly the strongest successor.
No, history wasn't kind to Commodus.
No. And Aurelius himself died out in Pannonia, modern-day Hungary or Austria area, in 180 AD.
Right.
So, yeah, a life really defined by duty and serious challenges.
Absolutely. And your notes really highlight that he wasn't just thinking deep thoughts in isolation, was he? He was the emperor, a leader facing, well, immense real-world pressures.
Mm-hmm.
We also got your notes drawing some interesting lines, comparisons to early Christian thought, which is fascinating, plus those excerpts on virtues, vices, the different translations of meditations over time.
And the Fronto connection, too.
Right, his tutor Fronto showing up in other writings. But what you're really after, as we understand it, is to kind of grasp the core philosophy here, the ideas that might actually click and, offer some real guidance day to day.
That's the goal. Quick but thorough understanding, maybe some aha moments.
Okay, perfect. So let's dive right in then. What's the absolute heart of Aurelius's philosophy? What's the bedrock?
Well, at its core, it's Stoicism.
Yeah.
And Aurelius's version is really tied into that central Stoic idea of living in agreement with nature.
Homologumenstav fusesin, was it?
That's the Greek, exactly. Homologumenstav fusesin. Now, it's really important to get what that means. It's not about just, giving in to every impulse or desire.
Right, not just going with the flow in a passive way.
Not at all. It's deeper. It's about understanding the fundamental order, the logos or reason of the universe, and then consciously aligning your own actions and will with that cosmic nature.
Okay.
And to help structure this, Stoics usually divided philosophy into three parts. There's physics, studying the universe itself, its structure, its laws. Then logic, dealing with reasoning, arguments, how we actually know things.
Right.
And finally, ethics, which is really the payoff, right?
Right.
How we ought to live our lives based on that understanding of nature and reason.
Okay, so it's about figuring out how the universe works, how thinking works, and then how to act properly within all that. Makes sense.
Pretty much.
So when we get to that ethics part, the how should we live bit, what's the main guiding principle for someone like Aurelius?
For the Stoics, and definitely for Aurelius, it boils down to this. Virtue is the only true good. It's the essential ingredient for happiness, for eudaimonia.
The only good. That sounds strict.
It is. And conversely, vice is the only true evil, the source of unhappiness.
Yeah.
They hold a really firm line on this. Almost no shades of gray. You're either virtuous or you're not.
Huh. No middle ground. Like slightly virtuous.
Not really, in their view. It's quite an extreme position, you could say. This idea just permeates meditations, this constant self-exhortation towards inner excellence, moral integrity, being rational.
So it's a constant effort towards this ideal state. Did they talk about like how you know if you're on the right track, how you determine what's true or virtuous?
Yeah, they did. It connects to their theory of knowledge, their criterion of truth. It's kind of interesting. They picture the mind at birth like a blank sheet, a tabula rasa.
Okay.
And then sensory experiences, they call them phantasiae, make impressions on this sheet, like images or sensations.
Right, stuff coming in from the outside.
Exactly. And from repeated experiences, we naturally form general ideas, koinai enoi, or sometimes kalepses. Think like dog or justice. Basic concepts.
Okay, we build up concepts from raw data.
Right. But the real test of truth for them was something called a cataleptike fantasia, a holding perception or grasping impression.
A holding perception. What does that mean exactly?
It's an impression that's so clear, so distinct, and seems so obviously connected to a real object that the mind is almost compelled to assent to it. It grasps reality. It carries its own mark of truth,
Like an undeniable feeling of this is real.
Kind of, yeah. It has to originate from something real and represented accurately. That was their standard for certainty.
Okay, that's a fascinating way to think about knowing things. Now, the materials you sent also drew some really interesting comparisons between this Stoic mindset and, well, a Christian one. Could you unpack those differences a bit?
Yeah, that's a key point in the context provided. Contrast what it calls the Roman or Stoic temperament of modest self-reliance,
Okay.
with the Christian emphasis on things like passivity, humbleness, and reliance on the presence and personal friendship of God.
Right. Quite different vibes there.
Very different. Both traditions might advocate for detaching from worldly things, sure, but how they approach it differs. Stoicism pushes towards this active life guided by reason and fulfilling your duty. You rely on your own rational nature.
Inner strength.
Exactly. Whereas Christianity often emphasizes a deeper sense of humility, maybe even inherent sinfulness, and reliance on divine grace, on God's help.
Okay, so self-reliance versus reliance on the divine. What about things like dealing with faults or suffering?
Good question. Aurelius absolutely talks about self-examination, scrutinizing your own faults. But the Christian perspective often involves a more intense focus on sin and repentance. And that idea, really central to Christianity, that virtue can be found through suffering or that suffering itself can be redemptive, that's pretty much absent in Aurelius.
Interesting. He sees suffering more as something to be endured with reason, not something potentially good in itself.
Generally, yes. It's an external thing, ultimately indifferent, that you meet with inner fortitude, not something embraced in the same way.
So clear distinctions in how they view personal responsibility, our relationship to the divine, and even the meaning of hardship. It seems Aurelius is very much about, like you said, inner strength, doing your duty.
Precisely. You see it constantly in Meditations. He talks about serving the divine spirit, which is implanted within him, the daemon or reason,
Okay.
keeping it pure from, violent passions or distractions, and practicing this unwavering courtesy and consideration towards others, even when they mess up.
Right, that comes through strongly.
And he had this powerful idea that when someone does wrong, they actually harm themselves the most by degrading their own rational nature.
Ah, that's a really interesting perspective. It shifts the focus entirely.
It does. And it leads naturally to his emphasis on forgiveness and understanding rather than anger or resentment. It's all about maintaining your own inner equilibrium, your own reason.
Inner governance, self-mastery.
Oh.
That seems key. What about the bigger picture stuff like life, death, the gods? What were his thoughts there?
Well, on death, Aurelius is remarkably accepting. He sees it as a natural process, an inevitable end, part of the cycle of nature.
Just dissolution.
Yeah, exactly. Dissolution back into the elements. There are hints maybe of the individual soul being reabsorbed into the universal soul, the anima mundi, but it's not a strong focus.
Not a personal afterlife in the way we might think of it.
Not clearly, no. Your notes mention this sense of strenuous weariness in his attitude towards duty. He does his job, but maybe without the cheerful confidence that someone like Socrates showed facing death.
More resignation, perhaps.
Perhaps. Though there are also these more enigmatic lines here and there. Talk about a potential awakening to what is real, or things being recreated out of corruption. It's not entirely clear, but it suggests maybe more complexity than just simple annihilation.
Some ambiguity there.
Yeah.
And his view of the divine, the gods.
He acknowledges the traditional Stoic view of the universe as providentially ordered, sometimes refers to the God, but his personal hope seems, well, quite reserved. It's more focused on aligning with the divine reason within himself and within the cosmos, rather than personal piety towards specific deities.
So, respect for the cosmic order, focus on inner reason, acceptance of death, maybe with a tiny flicker of something more, but not dwelling on it.
That seems a fair summary, yeah.
Now, one thing in the material that really jumped out was his view on the early Christians. It seemed quite negative.
It did, didn't it? It's striking because we admire Aurelius for his virtue, his wisdom, yet he apparently saw Christians as basically sectarians. The quote was, violently and passionately set upon opposition.
Wow. Despite some parallels in ethics, you'd think.
Right. There are parallels, emphasis on inner life, detachment from worldly goods. But historically, you have to remember, early Christianity was this new, sometimes countercultural movement within the empire.
Seen as disruptive.
Potentially, yeah. Their refusal to participate in certain state rituals, their exclusive claims. It probably seemed obstinate, irrational, maybe even dangerous to someone deeply invested in Roman tradition and order, like Aurelius was.
Okay, so a clash of worldviews, maybe amplified by the politics of the time. That makes sense. Right. So we've got a good handle on the core philosophy, the context. Let's pivot to the really practical stuff. Meditations is famous for being almost like a self-help journal. What are the big actionable takeaways?
Absolutely. It's packed with them. I
Mm.
think number one, maybe the most frequent theme, is the absolute importance of focusing on the present moment.
Living in the now.
Exactly. He's constantly reminding himself and us don't get dragged away by worries about the future or regrets about the past or even what's happening elsewhere right now.
Just focus here.
Just here, just now. He has that great line, something like, "Man can part with no life properly, save with that little part of life which he now lives. Your only real possession is this instant."
That really resonates, especially today with, you know, constant distraction.
Totally. Anchor yourself in the present. That's foundational.
Okay, so focus on the present. What's
Yeah.
another key piece of advice?
Tied very closely to that is the principle of accepting what you can't control. This is classic Stoicism, right?
The dichotomy of control.
Precisely. Aurelius hammers this home. You have to distinguish between what's actually up to you. Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, your will.
Your inner world.
Right. And what's not up to you is pretty much everything else. External events, other people's opinions, your health to some extent, your reputation.
So much is outside our control.
Exactly. And he says those external things aren't inherently good or bad, they just are. It's our judgment about them that causes distress.
So it's not the event, but my reaction to the event.
That's the Stoic key. If you can internalize that, it's incredibly freeing. Cuts out so much pointless anxiety and anger.
Yeah, you can see how that would build resilience, which leads to the next point.
Definitely. Flowing right from acceptance is building inner resilience or fortitude. Don't let external things, especially other people's actions, mess with your inner peace.
Easier said than done, maybe.
Oh, for sure. But that's the goal. He asks himself things like, "Doth any man offend? It is against himself that he doth offend. Why should it trouble thee?"
Turn it back on them internally.
Or that other famous one, "The best kind of revenge is not to become like unto them." Don't let their negativity infect you. Maintain your own integrity.
Keep your own side of the street clean, basically. Powerful. What else stands out?
There's his view of the universe as one interconnected system, like a single living being with a rational soul or essence.
The cosmic city idea?
Sort of, yeah. We're all parts of this larger whole. Citizens of the world, you might say. Our lives are interwoven. Understanding this fosters a sense of, well, belonging and also responsibility to the whole. Less focus on just the isolated self.
Like seeing yourself as a cell in a larger body.
It's a good analogy, yeah. We're all connected, all part of the same rational fabric.
That's quite a perspective shift from our usual individual focus.
It is. And related to that cosmic view is his emphasis on impermanence. Constant change, constant flux.
Nothing lasts.
Nothing. Everything arises, serves its purpose in the flow, and then dissolves back into the whole. Fame, power, wealth, even memory itself. It's all temporary.
Right. He mentions those Roman figures, Camillus, Caeso.
Yeah, big deals in their day, now barely footnotes.
Yeah.
It's a reality check. Don't get too attached to things that are inherently fleeting. Keep perspective.
It's a call for humility, really.
A cosmic humility, absolutely. And importantly, he stresses that Stoicism isn't just navel-gazing. It demands virtue in action.
It's not just thinking, it's doing.
Exactly. You have to actively live virtuously. Fulfill your duties as a Roman, he'd say, but also just as a human being. Contribute positively to that interconnected whole we talked about.
Right. Practice what you preach, basically.
Day in, day out. And he has advice for how to do that, especially in dealing with others. His take on handling others' faults is really insightful.
What's the approach?
He argues that people mainly err because they have a mistaken idea of what's good and evil. They're acting out of ignorance, essentially.
So they don't know any better.
In a fundamental sense, yeah. And if you see it that way, it should lead to pity or understanding or gentle correction, not anger or resentment.
Treat their faults like a kind of blindness.
Kind of, yeah, a blindness to the true good, which again helps you maintain your own inner calm.
That requires a lot of empathy.
It does. And finally, circling back to mortality, he encourages preparation for death. Not in a morbid way, but
Like, be ready.
be ready. Live each day well, as if it could be your last. Accept the natural process of dissolution without fear or complaint. It's just part of the deal. And ultimately, all of this, the focus on the present, acceptance, resilience, connection, virtue, understanding others, facing death, it all points towards the ultimate goal, inner peace. True happiness, he argues, comes from within, from a mind that's content with virtue and aligned with reason.
Not from external
Not
circumstances.
primarily, no. Those are secondary at best. The real prize is tranquility, a well-ordered inner state.
Wow. Okay. That's a really comprehensive toolkit for life, isn't it? Based on reason, acceptance, and virtue.
It really is.
Now, you mentioned the context of his life in those letters with Fronto. How does knowing about Aurelius, the man, the emperor, the student, help illuminate these philosophical points?
It adds crucial depth, I think. Knowing he wrote these intensely personal reflections, Meditations wasn't meant for publication, remember?
Yeah.
While commanding armies on the frontier dealing with plague, political intrigue, personal loss, it makes his focus on duty, resilience, inner strength seem less like abstract ideals and more like hard-won survival strategies.
Right. These weren't just theories for him. He needed them.
Exactly. There were tools for enduring immense pressure. And then the Fronto letters, they show a different side.
More personal.
Yeah, more relational. You see him as a student discussing rhetoric, literature, Cicero, old Roman writers. You see Fronto acting as an advisor, sharing his own griefs, like losing children. It provides this human counterpoint to the sometimes austere self-reliance of Meditations.
A glimpse of the man behind the Stoic mask, maybe?
In a way. And that one mentioned in Meditations itself is quite telling, isn't it? Where Aurelius says Fronto taught him basically not to expect real warmth or affection from the ruling class.
Ouch. Yeah, that's quite a poignant observation about his own social sphere.
It suggests a certain emotional isolation, perhaps, that might have also fueled his turn inward, his search for solace in philosophy.
Fascinating. It really paints a richer picture. Okay, so to try and wrap this all up for our listener, if we had to boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways from this whole deep dive into Marcus Aurelius?
Okay, the essentials, I'd say. Number 1, live in the present. That's your only real time.
Got it.
2, accept what you can't control. Focus your energy on your own thoughts and actions.
Right.
3, cultivate inner virtue and resilience. That's the only true good and your fortress against adversity. 4, understand you're part of a larger whole, interconnected with everyone and everything. Act accordingly.
The cosmic view.
5, embrace impermanence. Don't cling too tightly to things that will inevitably change or fade.
Okay.
6, act virtuously in your daily life. Put the philosophy into practice.
Be good, do good.
7, approach others' faults with understanding, not anger. Remember, they likely err out of ignorance.
Empathy.
8, live mindfully of death, accepting it as natural.
Prepare.
And finally, 9, seek inner peace above all. True happiness is found within, through reason and virtue.
That's a really powerful summary. Focus, accept, be virtuous, connect, let go, act, understand, face mortality, seek peace within.
That pretty much covers the core, I think.
Fantastic. And we really hope this deep dive has given you, our listener, that shortcut we promised, a way into these deep ideas with some solid examples and quotes to hang on to.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Please.
Given everything we've discussed, especially that stoic focus on finding inner peace, even when the world outside is, chaotic, how might applying just one of these principles, consciously maybe acceptance, maybe focusing on the present, how might that shift your approach to a challenge you're facing right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. Taking one principle and really applying it.
Just something to mull over.
A really compelling question to take away. Well, thank you for providing such incredible source material and for joining us on this deep dive. We really trust it's delivered the insights you were looking for.